ClickDork back again. I wanted to explain version 5 to you from a back-end standpoint. The other video shows you all the whoop-la and all the great stuff about version 5, but I wanted to walk you through some of the coding. First of all, if you open up the app in this area here that's showing my Infinity Flow control says visualization not found, that's simply because you do not have Infinity Flow as an extension set up. Not a big deal. Just go ahead and remove that. You'll notice it is a linked visual because it's a master. So if you just remove that from your screen, you'll be able to drag or drop the click org chart instead, and then you'll be able to use it right out of the box. So I wanted to walk through some of the code because what you saw in the demo video is I could select a query and press this button, hey, go get the query performance results. Well, how in the world did I do that? That's what we call a partial reload. So I'm going to walk you through some of the code for version 5 to see how that happens. So first of all, one of the most important things that differentiates version 5 from previous versions is that this was done really with the idea that if you were really focusing on query stats, so you're not really caring about long-term cost, that's not the sole aspect of what you're doing, and you're really trying to focus on performance, you may want to just have a window of time. It's not like I'm going to go analyze performance from a query 8 months ago, so I might just need a small rolling window. Say I want 14 days, so I put whatever days I want minus 1, and will get me days up to today. That's one of the key things. The other part of this is as I walk through the Snowflake instances, everything is being pulled live. Live, live, live. I do not use QVDs with version 5 at all versus what I did with version 4. In version 4, I gave you the ability to have one instance live, the other versions backed up, but all of them would give you the ability to say, hey, I really want to do this in an incremental fashion. And so I could either say, hey, I just load all the data from QVDs, everything's backed up, I'm working offline, or I could go through and do partials for these things to where I would say, what's the latest date that I already have in my QVD? Now let me concatenate the new stuff. Version 5 is different. Everything goes live. So there's no QVDs because I'm just looking at this small rolling window of time. If you're an organization that has, you want to track both the live stuff for like these queries and do statistics and see the trends and watch your cost, you definitely want to be thinking about using version 4 instead. So you can keep all the history for as long as you like, or simply take version 5 and make the modifications yourself and try to blend the code. So let's get into what happens when I push that button that says, go get me the query stats right now. So first thing is I have to check, is this a partial reload? And this is when that button is going to call partial reload. And so what I do is I say, whoa, 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 whoa. I need to know what connection I'm looking at. So the query ID that gets set on the screen when I push the button, I need to look at that query ID and then go back to these instances to find out which connection instance is related to that specific query ID. Then I need to go get the connection name from that list of instances so that I can make a connection. Because otherwise, it's going to have whatever the latest connection was, it would have still remained connected to that latest one. And that's not what I want. Plus, these connections end up happening during the partial reload fall. So there wouldn't be a connection. So depending on how the code is, always be thinking, if I'm in a partial reload, who do I really need to be connected to? Hopefully that makes sense. I know I kind of danced around that for a second. So once I make that connection and I know what my query ID is, I simply go run a Snowflake query to call this get operator stats function, and I give it that query ID. So this comes back, it does some really cool things for me, like the ability to parse this JSON. So I can say get this subfield out of it, get this subfield out of that subfield out of this thing, and I can bring all of those parsed JSON things back really easy breezy for me. I take that information, there's a few things here I do with it, like, hey, I want to get some aggregates. So out of all this, how much exploding stuff did I do? How much queries were too large? How many queries with the union flag did I have? Simply so that I've got some flags to check on my screen. The last step I do is, as you saw in the video, if I have situations where in this code I've got these exploding joins and things like that that I want to call out for the user so that I can actually launch to that site, I build this on the fly in the code. And so I tell it, here's the link that I would need. Now, the image, as you can see here, is coming from my ClickDork blog site. So you would probably end up wanting to change this code to use whatever image you want. You could end up expanding this and say, hey, these 4 specific things are nice, but there's 8 others that I want as well. So you very well might want to change these so that your corporate site isn't hitting my ClickDork blog, which for some reason your corporate site might have blocked. And so you don't want your users experiencing any issues because you're loading images out of my site. So that's something else you could do. When I look at this query history again, I'm getting it live. There's no backup here. And so what I do with this date and time, because each of the queries could use a different field that it compares to the start time, you'll notice that I've got where clause equals this start time, where some of these other things, it's going to be a little bit different, where event timestamp is greater than this time. And when I'm looking at sessions, where the created on is greater than this. So you'll see different ones, but all with this flavor of looking at that whatever that timestamp is that you said I want to have it for rolling for. One of the things I wanted to call out in here, databases can get loaded pretty quickly, right? You may have, depending on your company, 100, 1,500, 1,000 databases. Woo! Not a big deal. You may have 100,000 tables or so. You could have an awful lot of columns out there. So when you're in this application, if you look here and you say, hey, we don't ever need to look at this database stuff. We just don't care. We're not going to walk through to see our schemas in ClickSense. I would take these 3 sections out. Either just remove them below the exit script or just completely comment them out, because the longest time it takes to do reloads here is for the columns, because we're going to get all of those columns, and you can't really compare anything to say, hey, give me an incremental load of my columns with the way this is done. So just a hint, if it's taking too long to load and you are never looking at connection details, or database details I should say, just remove that code. You don't need that. So hopefully this quick little video helps you understand how to come in here and make the modifications. The last thing I want to talk about is these connections. You'll notice when I build these, I'm just giving it a name for what that connection name is that I, as a user, I would see. If SFPE and Azure Partners isn't clear enough on some of these, then you would want to make these whatever your user names might think those different Snowflake tenants would be for you. And finally, I am actually pointing to the real connection. And so I point in my code, this connection happens to be part of a space, whereas my other connector is part of my personal space. So if you have different tenant connectors, maybe you've got those defined in different locations. All you have to do is give it what space it is, colon, and then the name of that connection. And as this thing is spinning through, it will go find that connection, get it, and then connect to it for you. And that's how I handle being able to roll through 1, 2, 5, 10 Snowflake instances. Have a great day.